Hello guys, welcome back. This is Nakul from Tech Boy, and today I'm going to tell you which phone is the best under 10,000 rupees. Well, according to me, and this video comparison would be based on the specification and user experience. So let's get started. Okay, so first of all, I want to tell you that I won't go in much detail about any of these devices because that would take a lot of time if I tell you about each and every detail about each and every device. So I'm just gonna go for the specs, overview, and my user experience for these devices. And based on that, I would choose the best device out of these. So now let me tell you all the devices I have here. First of all, I have the Lenovo A6000. Then I have the Asus Zenfone 5 1.6 GHz model. And then I have the Yureka and Redmi Note. So let's compare all these. So the first things first, the prices. Lenovo A6000 costs 7,000 rupees, Asus Zenfone 5 1.6 GHz variant costs 10,000 rupees, Yureka costs 9,000 rupees, and Redmi Note 4G costs 10,000 rupees. So these are all under 10k phones. But I want to tell you one thing here, that originally I have the Redmi Note 3G over here, but I will compare it as a 4G variant because there isn't much difference, just the processor, and the 4G variant has a single SIM. So I'm gonna assume that this is the 4G model. I have the all specs of 4G. So let's start comparing. So now let's talk about the network and SIMs. Lenovo A6000 is dual SIM 4G, Asus Zenfone 5 is 3G dual SIM, Yureka is dual SIM 4G, Redmi Note is single SIM 4G. So if we talk about the winning point, then I guess these two phones take the winning point, A6000 and Yureka, because both of them are 4G and dual SIM, while Asus Zenfone 5 is dual SIM but it's 3G, while Redmi Note 4G is 4G but again it is only single SIM. So up next is the screen. Lenovo A6000 has 5 inches of display with 720p resolution HD, and so is the Asus Zenfone 5 inches 720p. Yureka has 5.5 but same resolution 720p, and so is the Redmi Note 5.5 inches 720p. So if we talk about the winning point, then I guess these two devices take the winning point in terms of bigger screen, but it's totally up to your preference because some people like compact phone and they don't really like big phones. So in case of that, Lenovo A6000 is the best phone in terms of compact because it's the smallest, has 5 inches of screen, and it is the lightest also. But if we talk about in terms of bigger is better, then definitely these two phones are better than these two. Plus I want to tell you that the Yureka has Corning Gorilla Glass 3, and so is the Asus Zenfone 5, but I don't know which glass is over there on the A6000 and Redmi Note because it wasn't mentioned anywhere on the net. And because of no Gorilla Glass, the screen of Lenovo A6000 is a total fingerprint magnet, as I also mentioned that in the honest review video about this phone. Plus I want to give you a heads up here that if you want to know in detail about any of these phones, then I have made a honest review video about all of these phones, and you can find the link in the description, or I will put in the corners of this video. Like over here you'll find the A6000, here Yureka, Redmi Note 4G, and Asus Zenfone 5 in this corner. So you can click on the respective corners to see honest review video about any of these phones. So now let's move on to the Android version of these devices. The Lenovo A6000 comes with Android 4.4.4 KitKat out of the box, while Asus Zenfone 5 is running Android 4.4.2, which is also KitKat but one step lower than the A6000. The Yureka is also running the Android 4.4.4 KitKat, while the Redmi Note 4G is running Android 4.2.2, which is Android Jelly Bean. So this is a device which is still running Android Jelly Bean, and that really sucks, I would say, because we are at the verge of getting the Android Lollipop, and we have got the Android Lollipop in many of the devices like Moto G and all that. So it's really bad to know that it's still running Android Jelly Bean. But if we talk about the winning point in the Android version, then I would like to give it to you, Yureka, because this phone is running Android 4.4.4 out of the box. Plus Micromax has promised us that this phone will receive updates on monthly basis, and as we have already received an update regarding the proximity sensor issue and all that, so that's good, and we are looking forward for more updates. So the winning point in the Android version, I would like to give it to you, Yureka. So the next thing is the processor now, and Lenovo A6000 has 1.2 quad-core Snapdragon 410 processor. Asus Zenfone 5 has 1.6 dual-core Intel processor with hyper-threading technology, means it can actually perform as a quad-core processor. Yureka has 1.7 GHz octa-core processor Snapdragon 615, while Redmi Note 4G has 1.6 GHz quad-core Snapdragon 400 processor. So the clear winner is Yureka over here. And if we talk about the Antutu benchmark score, then Redmi Note 4G scores around 22,000, Yureka scores around 32,000, Asus Zenfone 5 same as Redmi Note scores around 22,000, and Lenovo A6000 scores around 20,000. So the clear winner is the Yureka. But if you want to see the real benchmark, then you can surely go in my videos and check out the benchmark video of any of these devices. You'll find it there. But the winning point goes to Yureka because of the best processor and best score in Antutu benchmark. Now if we talk about the GPU of these devices, then Lenovo A6000 has Adreno 305, Asus Zenfone 5 has PowerVR SGX 544 MP2, and I really hate that name because that's really long. And then Yureka has Adreno 405 and Redmi Note has Adreno 305. Now let's see how much the GPU of these devices actually score in Nina Mark II test. I already ran these tests before, and as you can see, Yureka scores 55 FPS, Zenfone 5 scores 60.4 FPS, and Lenovo A6000 scores 54.1 FPS. Now because I don't have the actual Redmi Note 4G, I have the 3G variant, but if we talk about the scores of Redmi Note 4G in the GPU, then I saw on the net that it scores 57 FPS. So if we talk about the winning point, then obviously Asus Zenfone 5 takes the winning point because it scores 60 FPS, which is the highest score in the GPU out of these four devices. Then will come the Redmi Note 4G as it scores 57 FPS, and then comes the Yureka, and lastly comes the A6000. So let's move on to the memory of the devices, and Lenovo A6000 has 8 GB and can be expanded up to 32 GB. Zenfone 5 has 16 GB and can be expanded up to 64 GB. And Yureka has 16 GB and can be expanded up to 32 GB. And Redmi Note has 8 GB and can be expanded up to 32 GB. So the winning point goes to Asus Zenfone 5 because it has 16 GB and the expandable capacity is 64 GB, while Yureka has 16 GB internally, but the expanded capacity is 32 GB. So up next is the RAM of these devices, and Lenovo A6000 has 1 GB of RAM, Asus Zenfone 5 has 2 GB of the RAM, and so is the Yureka 2 GB, and so is the Redmi Note 2 GB. So the only losing device over here is the Lenovo A6000 because it has 1 GB RAM. So these three are draw, and this is the loser over here. Now let's move on to the very important part of any phone, which is the camera, guys. And Lenovo A6000 has 8 megapixel camera autofocus with LED flash, and the front camera is a 2 megapixel. Asus Zenfone 5 also has the 8 megapixel rear facing camera autofocus with LED flash and 2 megapixel front facing camera, same as the Lenovo A6000. Yureka has a 13 megapixel autofocus camera with LED flash, and the front camera is a 5 megapixel. And so is the Redmi Note 13 megapixel rear camera autofocus with LED flash. So that's actually a draw between Yureka and the Redmi Note and Asus Zenfone 5 and Lenovo A6000. And if we talk about the picture quality of these devices, then as much as I have used these phones and as per my experience with these devices, the best picture quality is in Redmi Note. It's no matter what, indoor or outdoors, with flash, without flash, it's just great. And after that comes the Yureka and Asus Zenfone 5. They're kind of a draw, as I also mentioned in the comparison video of the both, because with flash, Asus Zenfone 5 is also better because with flash, when you click pics with Yureka, it's turned out to be a bit bluish and yellowish on the top. But if we talk about without flash, then obviously Yureka is better because of the higher megapixel camera. But then again, Asus Zenfone 5 is better in low lighting conditions, way better than any other phone. So that's why it's kind of a draw between these two phones. And lastly comes the Lenovo A6000 in the picture quality. But if you want to see the photo samples, then you can obviously click on the corners, and that will take you to the honest review video of these phones. And in that video you can see the picture samples that I have included in those videos. But if we talk about the winning point in the camera, then Redmi Note takes the winning point. It has incredible camera, I would say. Then comes the Yureka and Asus Zenfone 5 in the second place. They have a draw. And lastly is the Lenovo A6000. Plus, I want to tell you one more thing, that these three devices, Asus Zenfone 5, Yureka and Redmi Note, can record videos at Full HD 1080p, while Lenovo A6000 can record only at 720p HD. So that's again a losing point for the Lenovo A6000. So let's move on and talk about the battery of these devices, guys. Lenovo A6000 has 2300 mAh battery, Zenfone 5 has 2110 mAh battery, Yureka has 2500 mAh battery, and Redmi Note has 3100 mAh battery. So obviously the winner is the Redmi Note in the battery, biggest battery and maximum backup, I would say. You can easily get around 18 hours with normal usage, and even more with less usage. Then comes the Yureka, or it's a draw between Yureka and Lenovo A6000, I would say. But still Yureka is a bit more higher, I would say. You can easily get around 15 to 17 hours with normal usage and more with less usage. And then comes the Lenovo A6000, in which you can also get around 15 hours, 15 hours with normal usage, no problems with that. And the worst battery is of Asus Zenfone 5. It has only 2110 mAh and it can barely give backup of 10 to 12 hours with normal usage. And with less usage, you can get around 14 to 15 hours. But this is the loser out of these in the terms of battery, and everybody knows that, I would say. So the winner in the battery is Redmi Note, and very close is the Yureka, and again very close is the Lenovo A6000. So the battery of these devices, according to themselves, are really good, I would say. And Asus Zenfone 5 has really poor battery. And now let's move on to the call quality, guys. And out of these four, the best call quality is of Yureka. Very loud, very clear, no call drops, nothing at all. And after that is the Lenovo A6000. Again, very loud, very clear, and no problems at all. Just 10% less louder than Yureka. That's why it has a second number. And on the third, we have the Redmi Note. Again, loud and clear, but sometimes you can hear a bit of disturbance or hashiness, and sometimes it can also drop calls. So that's why it's on the third. And after that, on the fourth position is the Asus Zenfone 5. Very hashiness and disturbance in 50% of the calls, I would say, and speaker used to be very rough when you put it on the maximum, and they fixed it after an update, but it's still there when you put the headset on the maximum volume. You can still hear that roughness, and sometimes it also drops calls, not usually but very less, but it's just the sound quality how it feels, so that's why it's on the fourth. It's not that bad in regular day basis, but still out of these four, this has the worst call quality and this has the best call quality. Now let's talk about the loudspeaker, guys, and out of these four, the best loudspeaker is of Lenovo A6000. It has dual loudspeaker, Dolby Digital, but they still not meet the expectation of Dolby Digital. Not very loud, clear, I would say, clear enough, but not that loud as Dolby Digital speaker should be. But still, out of these four, this is the loudest in the loudspeaker. And then comes the Asus Zenfone 5 in terms of loudness and clarity, and this is the second. And then comes the Redmi Note, this is the third. And then comes the Yureka, this is the least loudest, very clear, I would say, but the least loudest out of these. So the winner is Lenovo A6000 in terms of the loudness. Now I'll tell you some little things about these phones, like general things like USB on the go. This phone doesn't support the USB on the go, but these three support the USB on the go. So the loser is this one. And if you talk about the active noise cancellation, then Lenovo A6000, Yureka and Redmi Note does support active noise cancellation, but Asus Zenfone 5 doesn't support that. So this is the loser in that. And all of these phones can do call recording internally in the calling screen. When you make a call, you have an option there to record the calls. So that's pretty great. Plus, I'll tell you that these two phones, Asus Zenfone 5 and Lenovo A6000, doesn't have the backlight in the capacitive keys. As you can see, there is no backlight in the capacitive keys, and Asus Zenfone 5 also doesn't have the backlight in the capacitive keys, so that's a bummer. And Lenovo A6000 doesn't even have any notification LED on the top, so again, that's a bummer. But these three phones does have the LED notification. Plus, as Yureka is running the Cyanogen OS, means you can do tons of customization in this phone. Like it has gestures, double tap to make it sleep and double tap to wake it up. Plus many more features. If you want to know about them all, then you can watch the honest review video about this phone. The link will be in the description or in the corner of this video, as I told you about it earlier. And there's one more thing, that you can root Yureka and unlock its bootloader, and the warranty will not be void. So that's the best thing about this phone. You can do anything, unlock the bootloader, root it and change the ROM or do anything, and the warranty will still be intact. So that's the best thing about this phone. So now let me tell you the conclusion, guys, that which phone is the best out of these four. And if you're intelligent enough, then you would have already guessed that it's Yureka. Why? Because let me tell you the winning point about this phone. The first thing is that it's dual SIM and it's 4G. Now it's just like the Lenovo A6000, so it's the winning point for both of these devices, so that's one for this also. Then comes the screen. It has the biggest screen, like the Redmi Note, 5.5 inches, but it has the Corning Gorilla Glass 3 also. This phone also has the Corning Gorilla Glass Asus Zenfone 5, but it's not 5.5 inches. So that's a winning point for the Yureka, 5.5 inches with the Corning Gorilla Glass 3. The next thing is the Android version 4.4.4 out of the box, and with the promise of providing updates every month. So that's again a winning point for this device. And the next winning point is because of the processor, which is 1.7 GHz octa-core Snapdragon 615, which is the best out of these devices. And after that is the RAM, which is 2 GB, which is the same like Zenfone 5 and Redmi Note, but as it's not any less than these two devices, so that can be taken as a point as well. And after that is the noise cancellation and USB on the go, and the call quality is better. Plus you can root this phone and do stuff. The only thing which is not good in this device is the memory, which is also, I would say, good enough, 16 GB internal and 32 GB expandable. But the winning point of that was the Asus Zenfone 5, because it has a 16 GB internal and 64 GB expandable. And the other thing was the GPU, which was also best in the Asus Zenfone 5. And there was one more thing, which is the camera, which was best in the Redmi Note. But apart from that, all the things are good in the Yureka, like the dual SIM with 4G, and then the screen with Corning Gorilla Glass 3, the processor, the RAM, battery is also good enough, and the camera is also good enough for the daily use. Then you have the call recording and all those Cyanogen mod features and all that stuff. So that's why the winner of this is the Yureka. The best phone under 10,000 rupees is the Yureka. And on the second number, I would give it to the Redmi Note. And after that is the Asus Zenfone 5. And lastly, we have the Lenovo A6000. Plus there is one more phone which you can consider if you are going to buy a phone under 10,000 rupees, which is the Alcatel One Touch Flash. It also has really decent specs, so go check it out also. But in these four devices, Yureka is the winner. Then comes the Redmi Note 4G, then Asus Zenfone 5, 1.6 GHz variant, and then Lenovo A6000. So that's it for now, guys. This was the comparison video of these four phones. Thank you for watching. If you have any question, comments, or if you want to ask something, any doubts, then you can surely leave it in the comments down below. Plus you can also like me on my Facebook page, ask me questions over there, and I keep posting my upcoming and current activities over there, so you can go and like me there as well. The link of that page will be in the description below. So that's it for now, guys. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for more videos.